Welcome to the Sleep Sense Show. As always, brought to you by the Sleep Sense program, where podcast listeners can get a free customized sleep plan by going to www.sleepsense.net/listen.
Hi, I'm Dana. Welcome to today's show. I think it was Dr. Phil, or maybe it was my grandmother, who said, guilt is like sitting in a rocking chair. It gives you something to do, but it doesn't really get you anywhere. I had a great friend who had a baby at the same time as I had my first baby, and I remember us sitting around chatting one day over a glass of wine, and she said, I've never knew what guilt was. I didn't even have an inkling what guilt was until I became a mom. I've never felt so guilty as I do now that I'm a mother. And so I think that that's an important topic to discuss. I see it more and more often. A lot of moms and dads, parents in general, carrying around a lot of what we would call mommy guilt or parenting guilt. And the guilt is a tricky thing. There isn't a lot you can do about it. And it's really important that you learn to manage it, because guilt can become toxic. And I think guilt can even affect our children in a negative way. So we feel guilty about our guilt, which isn't very productive. So I want to talk today a little bit about the reasons why I think we are carrying around so much guilt as parents, so that you can start monitoring that in your own life and see, is that how it's showing up for you, and what can you do to sort of change your mindset around how you're raising your children. And then I want to give you a few really practical tools for dealing with a guilty episode, let's call it. And I'll share with you a most recent episode of my own as well a little later in the show. So I think there's really sort of three reasons why parents are carrying around more guilt. I think I would definitely say guilt is on the rise in our culture. And I think part of that is that a lot of parents are setting up their parenting experience as a race to be won. Now, let me talk a little bit about what I mean by that. I think, there's so much pressure, we're putting it on ourselves, and just sort of societal vague pressure all the time that, is your child hitting all their milestones? Is he sitting up yet? Is he walking yet? Is he talking in full sentences yet? And then when we get into school age, it's, is he in the advanced class? And what honors program is he going to get into? And what college will he eventually go to? And he didn't get into Harvard, what? Right? And all of this sort of makes it feel like a race to be won. And we collect all these little things as wins, like, oh, wow, look at, she's only 9 months and she's walking already, or she's only 2 and she's talking in full sentences. And so we're going around kind of cherry picking all these experiences and putting them in our pocket as signs of success, right? That we're winning this parenting game because look at how successful our children are. And that is a lot of pressure to put on yourself as a parent, and really that's a lot of pressure to be putting on our children as well. And that's something that I've really seen increase over the years as well. I can remember teaching grade 1, and there was one little girl in my class, and we were just talking about what she was going to do over the break, and she said, I've got piano, and I have dance, and I've got math tutor, and I've got all these extracurricular activities. And I said to her, well, when do you ever get to just play? And she just looked at me with like blank eyes, like she didn't even know what I was talking about. And she said, I don't have any time for that. And that's sad, because I do believe that children need some freedom in their lives. And I'll talk a little bit more about that word, which I think is a really important piece of this puzzle. So have a look at that. Are you treating this parenting journey like a race that needs to be won? Are you collecting all these successes or wins and making yourself feel pressure, but also giving yourself pats on the back for all these successes? And if you don't have as many as your friend or other kids in the class, are you using that as a comparative tool to sort of, make yourself feel bad or down or guilty about your children not being as successful as those around you? And that's a lot. I really want to stress how almost disrespectful it is really to the child. They're little human beings, and we need to respect that and honor that, and let them find their path and not force them down roads that might not be their destiny. We really want to nurture our kids so that they discover their loves and their gifts, and then we help foster that. And it might not be exactly the gifts that you're hoping to see, but they're gifts nonetheless, and they need to be honored for it. And success really doesn't lead to a happy life. I mean, sure, we like to be successful. We like to be good in our careers, and we like to be good in our marriages, and, have the car and the house and all of these things. We like it, but it doesn't actually foster happiness. It's not the definition of happiness. And really what we're coming back to more and more often when we look at the research is that it's not success or money or any of those things that bring us happiness, but it's our relationships with others that truly enrich our lives and bring us joy and happiness. And the relationship piece is so huge, and we need to allow children, again, some freedom to explore, to interact with other kids, to become socialized, to be creative, to have open-end play with others so that they learn how do you navigate relationships. And one of the most important pieces to having successful relationships is developing empathy for others. And I get a little bit concerned when I see, especially with our technological age, and so many kids are staring at screens and watching TVs and looking at phones, that piece, that relationship piece that we know is so super important to our overall satisfaction with life, I think it's in jeopardy. And so I want to urge you, especially with little ones, start now, just encouraging this development of relationships with you and their friends and their other family members, because that is going to lead to lifetime happiness. And I would say, bottom line, when parents are asked, what do you want for your child? Almost all of us say, well, I just want her to be happy, right? That's really all we want for our kids. And that relationship piece is really going to help them get there. Okay, so what else is stopping us from moving through this guilt or wading through this guilt? We're busy people. I think that's another important reason why people feel so much guilt in their day-to-day lives. We've got a lot of commitments to our work and our family, and the demands of families is much higher than it was. And I think that makes people feel vaguely guilty all of the time, right? If you love your job, or you have to travel for your job, or you work long hours, or you didn't have time to get proper groceries, so now you're eating grilled cheese sandwiches for dinner. All of these things, this is a tremendous amount of pressure that we put on ourselves to be perfect parents, but we don't have a lot of time to be perfect parents. And first of all, the notion of perfection is foolish, because nobody's ever going to be perfect, and we're always going to make mistakes, and that's important for our children to see, right? I want my kids to know, hey, living this life means that you're going to make some mistakes, and how do we navigate that, and how do we move through it, and how do we learn from those things? So I'm okay with that. That's something that's going to happen, and we need to just make peace with the fact that we're going to make mistakes. And I always measure it by quality, not quantity. I mean, I'm a busy businesswoman. I travel. This year I've been on 10 trips this year. That is a lot of travel. It's my goal for 2018 to cut that down a little bit. But yeah, I travel a lot. I have a successful business that I love. And that means sometimes I'm away from my family, or I work a long day. And I've learned to make peace with that as well. And here's a few reasons why. I want my children to see their mother being satisfied with her life. I wouldn't say happy, because I would be lying if I said every day, all day, I'm happy. But I'm certainly satisfied with my life, and I want them to see that, right? I want them to know that my career is important to me. They are as well. And I would take a really good guess and say that is how they feel. They know that they're loved, but they also know that their mother has a life of her own and a career that satisfies her. And if I didn't, I'd be a pretty grouchy mom, and that wouldn't be good for anyone. So when I'm feeling those moments of guilt, that's what I come back to, is that it's really quality, not quantity. And so I make a point to carve out family time. We eat dinners together most nights, which is really important to us. I try to have meaningful conversations with my kids as often as I can, which now that I have a 15-year-old is trickier than you would imagine, but I try. And I find that the best place for conversations that are meaningful are when we go out to eat as a family. We have a no screens policy when we go out to eat, and we work hard, I think my husband and I, to ask them meaningful questions, not just how was your day, because all you're going to get is a good or fine, but deeper questions about, what was the top. We just had a dinner the other night together, and we talked about what was your favorite movie of 2017, what was your favorite book of 2017, and why, and that led to some really great conversations. All right. So how do you, if you're in a moment of guilt, because this is going to happen and you're never going to be guilt-free, that's a fact of life. But when you are stuck in sort of a guilt trap, I want to give you about 5 things here to look at to sort of help you weed through it or get through it. I wanted to share a story with you about just recently a night of guilt that I experienced. And I was wrapping Christmas gifts, which is one of my favorite things to do. I love to wrap gifts. And I was wrapping my son's gift, and it's a dartboard. That's what he asked for. That's what he wanted. And I thought to myself, if I wrap this up, it's really going to look like the dartboard. It's not going to be a huge surprise that that's what it is. So I thought about, maybe doing this elaborate ruse, and I would wrap just a tiny gift with a card inside that said, I bought you the dartboard. So I kind of toyed with these different scenarios in my head, but my son's not the kind of kid who would really, that would more upset him or agonize him. He'd be in agony until Christmas morning. So it's not like it would be super fun for him to be like, ooh, I wonder what's in this tiny box. It would be more upsetting. So I weighed the pros and the cons of doing it one way or the other, and I ended up wrapping it just as is. But as soon as I put it under the tree, I started to regret my decision, and I started to agonize over it and feel super guilty. I'd ruined Christmas for him. He wouldn't be surprised now. He would know it was a dartboard. And it's silly when I'm telling you this. I'm listening to myself thinking, gosh, you're that is crazy, woman. What are you talking about? But I did. It's just these little things sometimes. They're not even really big reasons to be guilty, like a divorce or, you're moving across the country and taking them away from their friends. Those are big things that, okay, yeah, I get it, you feel guilty about, but all these little silly things come to the surface too. And I even lost sleep about it that night because I was just agonizing about that I'd made the wrong decision, and on and on and on it went. So one of the things that I do when I get into a little guilt loop is I need to identify the cause of the guilt. So I'm feeling guilty about a decision I made, but why? And when I got to the heart of it, it was, because I didn't want him to be disappointed. I wanted him to have a great Christmas. I didn't want to ruin his Christmas. And I realized that I was trying to manage his experience, right? And now that I'd wrapped a gift, I was envisioning this experience not being as much fun as it would be if I hadn't. But I don't have control over how he manages his emotions, and that's his job, and I have to let him have his experiences however they show up. And who knows, maybe I'm dead wrong and he's really secretly delighted to know that he's getting a dartboard. I don't know, but I'm trying, the guilt is coming from me trying to micromanage his experience, and that's not fair to him. So once I got to the bottom of that, I felt a little bit better. because that's what's underneath the guilt. If you feel guilty about, feeding your kids McDonald's, well, what is underneath that guilt, right? That, you didn't plan your meals well that week, or maybe you need to rethink how you get your groceries in the door on Sunday, or whatever. Like there's always something underneath it that's sort of bringing this guilt to the surface. And then problem solve. Usually there's an answer to these experiences that we're having, or at least a way to do it different next time. So, for example, if you feel guilty because you yelled at your child, well, why? What was underneath it? Were you rushed? Were you feeling pressure from work? Were you yourself running behind, and therefore you kind of projected that onto the child and lashed out? What was underneath it? And then how do you remedy it? So maybe it means you set your alarm for 10 minutes earlier, or you pre-plan what you're going to wear, or you get your briefcase ready, or you pack lunches the night before. There's always a way to alleviate or remedy the situation so that it won't show up as often. And that's going to help minimize your guilt. Because that's, yelling at your kids when you realize, that's more me than you, right? That doesn't leave you feeling that great throughout the day. But if you've made a mistake, and the fourth point is that forgiveness also has to be a huge part of your parenting experience. Forgiveness of self, really. You did it. You notice it. You're going to try to remedy it for next time, and then forgive yourself and let it go. Right? We're going to do these things. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to say things to our kids that we shouldn't have said, do things that we shouldn't have done, right? And hey, I do it too. And carrying around the guilt's not helpful, right? It's rocking in that rocking chair, getting me nowhere. So forgiveness has to be a piece of the puzzle where you just say, okay, I forgive myself for doing that. These are the things I'm going to do different next time. And I'm always just going to try to move forward and be a bit better next time. And the final point to that is to ask yourself if the feeling is true, right? So when I'm talking about this wrapping of the gift, sort of what's needling me is that, I made a bad decision. I'm a bad mom because I wrapped this dartboard. Again, this is silly, I know. But am I a bad mom? Is that true, right? Does that feel true to me? Well, no, it's not true. I am not a bad mom. And so always interrogate your emotions, especially when they're guilty emotions. Interrogate them like you are in, a cell with a cop, and this guilty feeling is under investigation, because it's most likely not true. Whatever the guilt is, I'm a bad mom because I've been on a trip, or I'm a bad mom because I fed him chicken nuggets again. At the heart of it, is it really true that you're a bad mom? No, it's not true. I doubt that it's true. It's not true for me. And so find proof of things that are more true than that, right? So look around. When I, again, think about this situation with the dartboard, I'm like, what else is true about the experience of Christmas? We have this great tradition that we do where we all open our gifts one at a time, and we have a wonderful breakfast together, and the whole day is just this really beautiful experience. And just because of this one little piece, it's not going to ruin his entire day, because there's so much goodness in that day. So when I start looking for other things that are the proof that this is more true, I'm a good mom because, right, I spent half an hour reading the same book with that child again last night, or I made time in my day to help him with homework, or I did. So you're looking for reasons that disprove the guilt and prove what is more true, that you are a great parent, that you are doing the best you can, that you are a human being and you make mistakes, and let's just let that guilt go. Thanks so much for listening today. Sleep well.
Thanks so much for listening. For more great tips on helping your child sleep through the night, remember to subscribe, rate, and review the show on iTunes or Stitcher, and never miss an episode.